Hello, my amazing kings and queens. King Moreland here. As you know, I'm on a mission to help you unlock your full potential and become the absolute best versions of yourself. Whether you're facing challenges, chasing dreams, or just looking to level up in life, you've come to the right place. Every week, we dive deep into mindset shifts, practical tools that will help you transform your life from the inside out. This is your channel, your personal development channel, so that you can become the powerhouses that you are meant to be in the world. A channel where mediocrity is not an option and excellence is our standard. So if you're ready to join a community of passionate individuals committed to growth, such as yourself, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button, and let's continue this journey together. So before we jump into this episode, there's something very, very important that I have to do. And I've never had to do this before, but we have to do it here. I need you to know that we have to do a friendly disclaimer because we are going to get into some really, really important content, but it does require me to give a friendly disclaimer. So before we get into the video, I need you to know that I am not a psychiatrist. I am not a therapist. I am not a licensed mental health professional at all. Nothing in this video should be taken as professional medical mental health advice. It's going to be helpful, but I don't want you to use it for psychological or therapeutic advice, all right? I need you to know that I am speaking from personal experience, independent research, and education, self-education, and that my intention is to help but not diagnose you all. So please take any and everything I share with a grain of salt because I come from a perspective of an educator and a content creator. So please use anything I give you that can help, discard anything that can't. And if you are experiencing any severe emotional distress, trauma, depression, or feel overwhelmed, I strongly encourage you to seek professional help from a licensed mental health professional. All right. So please understand that my goal here is to provide perspective, tools, and encouragement, not give definitive answers, not give any diagnoses. Nothing that I say is law. Please use discernment and please take responsibility for your own healing. I'm hoping this helps, but I'm understanding that I am not a professional in this field. So if it doesn't help, I'm sorry. I'm apologizing in advance. All right, now let's get into the video. We are going to be identifying the monsters, or what I like to say, naming the monster, hence the title. So we're going to learn what you are actually dealing with and why naming the monsters changes everything. And here's the tagline that we'll be using for this entire series. Great trauma kills off the previous versions of you. I'll say that one more time. Great trauma kills off the previous version of you and gives you the opportunity to rebuild yourselves intentionally. That's a quote, original quote from yours truly. All right. So essentially, it means that when you do go through trauma, you get an opportunity to develop the human being you're going to become on the other side of that. Because trauma absolutely does kill off a version of you. The man or woman you were before that happened to you, I'm sorry to break it to you, but you won't be able to be that person anymore because that person didn't experience what you did. And it's unfortunate and it's sad, but you do have to rebuild yourself and become someone new. And if you do this intentionally, you can become someone better. And that right there is the entire belief and spine of this 6-part series that we're going to get into. We're going to be naming the monsters so then we could tackle the monsters so then we can rebuild ourselves into someone better than who we were before the trauma ever took place in the first place. All right. So before we start talking about healing and growth and even rebuilding ourselves, there's something important that we have to do. We have to name what we're dealing with, right? So that's why I put together this video. This video is going to be the intro to this content, this 6-part series, where we are going to be tackling 5 different traumas that I've personally faced so I can give you some guidance on how you can deal with it, right? So I need you to know this as well. This episode is not about fixing you. Not this one. Not yet, at least. All right. This episode is going to be about giving you clarity before you take action, taking a deep, objective look at who you are today and where you are in your healing journey. All right. We want to identify things. And that's what this video is going to help you do. It's going to help you give you some clues as to what you might be dealing with. Okay. So we just have to start with the starting point because I know that some of you may know this already, but then some of you may not. All right. So what is trauma? Well, before we get into what is trauma, let's talk about what trauma is not. Trauma is not something that defines you and is not defined by something that happened to you. Trauma is defined by what happened inside of you because of what happened to you. So I need you to know that 2 people can go through the same exact thing and one person can be over it and processed all their emotions in a matter of months. And the other might take decades to recover, decades to heal, decades to fully process that pain, right? And that doesn't mean that one is weak and one is strong. No, it means that our nervous systems are different because we have different history, we have different upbringings, and we have different emotional capacities. And that all matters at the time of trauma. So even if the very same thing happened to one person and another person, they might experience that differently because they have different experiences as human beings, right? So let's revisit the question. What is trauma? So in simple terms, trauma is a emotional, psychological, or even a spiritual wound that is formed when an experience overwhelms you and overwhelms your ability to cope in that moment. So please hear me when I say this. Trauma is not you being emotional. Trauma is not you being weak. And trauma is not you being soft. It's something that you also shouldn't be facing alone. Because I always say this, if you live life long enough, chances are that at some point you'll experience some form of trauma. And that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. That comes with life. It's honestly a part of life. Unfortunately, a lot of who we are is formed because of the different pains we've gone through, right? So if you've experienced trauma, it just means you faced challenges or you face tragedy. And it's something important that you need to know when it comes to that. Trauma isn't always this dramatic event that happens. Sometimes it doesn't even occur in an instant. Sometimes you don't even know that you've been traumatized because it's not always aggressive. It doesn't always happen with violence. Trauma can come from a variety of different places, and trauma can come in a variety of different forms. So, in the sake of this series, I wanted to tackle the 5 forms that I've personally dealt with so I can give you personal insight. But these are forms of trauma I've also done independent research on. So not only am I giving you my personal experience, I'm going to give you what the researchers say, what the professionals say, what the experts say about it, right? These are the 5 that we're going to cover. We are going to cover abandonment trauma, betrayal trauma, And we are going to cover parental / generational trauma, because trauma comes in a variety of different forms. And at the end of the day, trauma isn't about trauma isn't about what happened to you. It's more about how do you recover from it. And that's what we're going to get into. You know, sometimes it's about what never should have happened in the first place. You know, for example, you may have had a loved one who turned their back on you and they shouldn't have. That can cause trauma in someone. And it's unfortunate because that's something they had no control over. But it's something that they have to deal with because this is your life. And this series is going to help you deal with it. But before we get too deep into that on this episode, I want to reframe the way you view trauma in the first place. So please, just hear me out. Just listen to me when I say this. Here's my monster metaphor. Imagine, I want you to imagine trauma is like a monster living in a dark closet in your mind. You know it's there, you hear it move, and you feel it react when certain things happen in your life. Those are called triggers, right? But because you've never opened the door to that closet and you never actually looked at the monster and faced it head on, it controls you from the shadows. This series, this 6-part series that we're getting into, this is about opening that door, flicking on the light, and actually viewing the monsters and naming them. And then we'll work towards befriending them. And I know you're thinking, what does he mean by befriend the monster? Well, what I mean by that is learning to live a good, wholesome life despite the trauma that you've experienced. Because even after you go through trauma, there's still a lot of life left to live. And you have people that love you and that want you to be here. So I want you to actually get the help that you need. And that's why I put together this series. This is going to be a series that guides you in the right direction so that you can get the professional help that you're looking for. So today, we are going to dive into naming these different monsters. And eventually, as we break down each monster one by one, I will give you actionable steps that you can take in order to face the monster, while also telling you to seek professional help to really, really, really dive into your healing process and dive into your healing journey. Because I want you to view it as a journey. It's something that you'll start, and as you get deeper into it, you might cry, you might feel sadness, but it's going to make you stronger. And eventually you'll come out on the other side a better person. So now, without any further ado, let's get to know our first monster. Monster number one, heartbreak / relationship trauma. This one is one of the most misunderstood forms of trauma there is, especially for guys, because men don't like to ever admit to being heartbroken. But it happens. Happens to the best of us. So I need you to know, heartbreak trauma isn't just about missing someone. It's truly about losing that version of yourself that existed specifically with that person. So if you found yourself obsessively thinking about one person, if memories hit you like emotional waves, if your chest tightens and your stomach turns and anxiety spikes the moment you see that person or see a picture of them, even just an Instagram post, it can send shockwaves going through your body. You know, if you lose motivation, lose your purpose, or even lose the desire to take care of yourself, like basic self-care, you're not even doing regular hygiene. If you've lost your appetite and the only thing you crave for is that person, you might be experiencing heartbreak trauma. And it's because now you have to imagine a life without them. And I need you to know it's okay. That's not weakness. That is heartbreak. And it happens. And the heartbreak trauma is now essentially attacking your identity. And it makes you feel like you're not who you're supposed to be, or you're not where you are, where you're not who you're supposed to be, and you're not where you're supposed to be. It's deeper than your emotions. When you experience heartbreak, it sometimes comes with like a physical feeling. Like it can genuinely feel like your heart's on fire. And that's okay because that's part of it. But it's not okay to stay there. You have to go on a healing journey. You have to get some healing. And it starts by being able to name that, right? Being able to name that that's what's going on, because you're not just missing them. You are experiencing a form of trauma, and that has a reaction on your mental and on your physical and even on your spiritual, right? And a lot of it comes from the fact that you are grieving not only the loss of that relationship and the absence of that person in your life, but even deeper, you're grieving the version of you that is now lost. Because once you leave that relationship, the person that was in love with that woman or that man dies as well. And you have to grieve that. Those dreams of spending your entire life with that person, they begin to fade away. And it's sad. It's sad, and it sends you down a path of healing. But you have to take it seriously if you ever want to get past it. But please stick with me. If you continue to watch this series, eventually we'll cover this monster in depth. And I'll help you overcome this, because this is something that I've personally gone through myself. And I came out on the other side. And I came out stronger. And I believe you can too. Now let me introduce monster number 2, grief trauma. Grief trauma comes from permanent loss. There's no easy way to say this, but that's that's deeper than losing someone in the physical. That's deeper than losing someone, but you can see them again. This is when you lose somebody permanently through death, or unfortunately like a miscarriage, or just losing someone in a way that can't be undone. That grief, that grief comes in waves. There will be days where you feel okay, and then there's going to be days where you feel like a mess. And unfortunately, I wish I could tell you that that goes away, but it kind of doesn't. Sometimes you feel numb to it, you feel detached. But here's the truth. Unfortunately, you have to find a way to live with it, because I don't think it ever truly goes away. Like, you're always going to miss that person. And it typically can be seasonal. Like around that time where you lost that person, that might be when you feel it the most. And it might come back every year. You have to find different ways to cope with it, because if you're going to keep going and live the best life possible, you have to find some way to like accept what happened and keep going. And here's what I've done, right? Without getting too deep into it on this episode, I feel like the best way you can continue to fight a strong fight without that person is to understand that you're doing it for that person now. Live your life in a way that would honor that person. If you honor them, then that allows you to carry on without collapsing, to understand that you're not just living for you anymore, you're also living for them. That gives your life even more meaning and even more purpose. And it honestly makes their life even more meaningful, because they're able to carry on through you. You become a part of their legacy. If you look at it like that, it will help you live with it and continue to move forward despite the pain that losing them will cause you. All right. So, with that being said, I think it's best that we reveal the next monster. This is monster number 3, abandonment trauma. This one's tough. Abandonment trauma often takes hold in us when we're like kids, babies, really young. It takes hold early in life. But here's the kicker, it becomes loud as we become adults. And if you've experienced the constant fear of being left, if you've overcome the thoughts of people pleasing, if you've been someone that over gives and just tries to look out for everybody you're around, if you are somebody who panics when others pull away from you, and if you honestly stay too long in unhealthy or even abusive situations because you feel terrified of being alone, I need you to understand that might not be love. That might be your abandonment trauma, your deep wounding for when you were a kid and maybe you were abandoned when you were young. That can cause you to reenact those things as you become an adult. And it can be the reason why you don't leave situations that you know you should leave. I need you to know that that's not love. That is a wound. And unfortunately, some breakups hurt so deeply, not because of the person who we just lost in that moment, but deeper than that. It hurts deeply because the person who left our lives before them. And it becomes like something that's triggering. Man, this monster whispers quietly but powerfully. And the best way I can describe the feeling is it's like a rain cloud being over your head when you feel like everybody will eventually leave at some point. Everybody is going to just leave you. And then you think that way. And unfortunately, thinking that way can result in actions that actually make that a true statement. And it then becomes a self proclaimed prophecy that everybody's going to leave you. And it happens from that wounding to then the way you think to then the way you act. And then it repels people. And all of a sudden, you've been saying that you were going to be alone your entire life. And then it happens. So I need you to know that mentality of if they leave me, I won't survive. That mentality, you have to do away with it because we must learn how to be content by ourselves, number one, but we also have to learn how to have secure, healthy relationships with others because when you establish a secure attachment style, it heals your abandonment wounding. And once that's healed, now you're able to have nice, fulfilling relationships that can last the entirety of your life. So that's definitely something that we're going to end up tackling because that's that's a tough one. And that's something that, again, I've personally gone through myself. And that's one that I'm still working through, actually. Just being transparent with you all. And that's okay because at the end of the day, it's important that we don't accept our traumas and our wounding. It's important that we continue to work towards healing it and becoming better, right? So then I have to introduce you all to our 4th monster. This is monster number 4, betrayal trauma. Betrayal trauma comes after cheating, lies, gaslighting, emotional deception, broken trust. If you find yourself in a situation where you're hyper aware of anything someone says, you find yourself replaying conversation in your head and dissecting every sentence that someone says, or if trusting people just seems too dangerous, or if you have this feeling that anger and grief coexist inside you at the same time, or even if you feel ashamed for not seeing the signs from the very beginning, that is betrayal trauma. That's because somebody at some point in your life wronged you and you trusted them and felt like they would never do that. That's what that is. And here's the part that people don't talk about enough. Betrayal trauma is one of those traumas that's extremely tough because it damages your sense of reality. It doesn't just harm your heart, it damages the way you perceive things, right? It makes you feel like your own perception is wrong. You begin to doubt yourself. It makes you question your own judgment. It makes you second guess yourself. And worst of all, it ruins your ability to believe in your discernment. And you start thinking that you are just terrible at picking the right people to be in relationships with, like you're a bad selector, right? Or you're even awful at choosing quality friends. When you experience betrayal trauma, it really does take a toll on the way you view the role. And that's the monster at work. It really is. And that one is very insidious because you think that you mistrusting everybody is your way of protecting yourself, but really you're putting this gigantic wall up, and that's making it hard for you to establish bonds with new people. And unfortunately, that's not a good thing because those people didn't do anything to hurt you in the first place. It's the people from your past that did that to you. So this is definitely something that we're going to work on getting healing for, just not in this episode. In this episode, we identify them. So finally, we have number 5. Monster number 5 is parental/generational trauma. This one, this one here runs deep. Parental trauma includes emotional neglect, absent parents, harsh or inconsistent parenting, addiction environments, poverty mindsets, and overall generational curses that have been passed down through decades. And sometimes even unconsciously. Sometimes your family did not know what they did not know. So it's really tough to blame them for this. However, somebody has to do something about it. Why not you? So if you notice yourself repeating unhealthy patterns that you've observed from your family, maybe you're dealing with this. If you've been manipulated or you find it difficult to express your emotions around your family, might be dealing with this. If you feel responsible for others' feelings, you might be dealing with this. If your self-worth is fragile because of different things that were said to you while you were growing up, you might be dealing with this. If you feel like you had to grow up too fast, I know that's some of you can relate to that. If you feel like unrealistic expectations have been placed upon you, if you feel like you were not set up to become successful, and if you feel like overall you got dealt a bad hand, I need you to know that some of the pain you're carrying, it didn't start with you. It did not start with you. And you can say that's not your fault that you're facing some of those challenges. But here's what I need you to know. Although it did not start with you, and you may have inherited these generational curses, it can end with you, and you can be the one who breaks those chains. This monster, this monster here, gets passed down through generations, and it teaches us survival mindsets, not freedom, not peace. And the unfortunate part is, if you're watching this and you can relate to anything I just said, you have the opportunity, and I would say even more than the opportunity, you have the obligation to be the one to face this monster and destroy it. This one can absolutely be destroyed. The other ones, you might have to find a way to cope with them and get past them. But this one, if you are diligent and disciplined enough, you can absolutely get rid of a lot of the generational parental trauma that have been experienced in your own family lineage. But it's going to take some work. And here's the thing. If you do nothing and you ignore it, this monster will end up harming the newest member in your family because it just gets passed down. It can stop with you, or you can ignore it like they did. I hope that you don't. Now, there is one more thing that I want to cover with you all in this episode. We need to go over the different levels of sadness, okay? So we have grief versus deep sadness versus what could be depression. So this part matters, all right? I want to help you identify this as well. Grief comes in waves, typically, and it's usually linked to a specific loss. It can have, it can coexist with joy, and it typically evolves over time. And if you do what I mentioned earlier, like reframe it and use your grief to fuel you to do something to honor the person, it can be transmuted into something positive, right? However, deep sadness feels heavier and it lasts longer. Enthusiasm tends to fade quickly. Hope tends to seem distant, but it's still receptive to you reestablishing your purpose and you doing things that you love and finding support, right? But here's the thing. When it becomes depression, and again, not diagnosing you all, but when it becomes depression, it may look like persistent numbness, hopelessness, a loss of interest in doing any and everything. And it changes from I don't feel like it to I never feel like it. You can sometimes sleep all day. You can completely lose your appetite and stop eating. You can start feeling like a burden on others. And you can like have thoughts of giving up and just not being here anymore. And when it gets to that point, that is when I encourage you all to get some help. Tell somebody. Don't hold all that in and try to face it alone, because as humans, we are social creatures. We were not meant to face things like that by ourselves. So when it gets that deep, tell somebody. If you're not going to seek professional help, hopefully the person you tell will seek professional help on your behalf. Because if you are depressed, I'm not diagnosing anybody, but if you have been diagnosed as depressed, you need a army of people behind you to help you tackle that. Okay? And I need you to know that it is strength in getting professional help. And please don't take this YouTube video as professional help. It is not. A YouTube video can only do so much. I want to steer you in the right direction, but I ultimately would love for you to go get professional help and actually get the help that you need. Okay. So, with that being said, I want to tell you why naming the monsters matter. There are several different monsters that I discussed in this video, right? And the reason why we have to name them is because for the different monsters, there are different approaches on how to handle them, right? For heartbreak trauma, you want to rebuild your identity and have emotional releases. Do things you love. Maybe take some time to yourself. I would call it a purposeful isolation. That's not when you're trying to be alone, but that's more so when you are picking and choosing to be alone because you know that it's going to benefit you and that you are just taking some time away from people. That can be a good thing. Okay. Grief, trauma needs time and it needs meaning and it needs support. And most importantly, in my opinion, it needs to you to refrain the loss of that loved one from being something negative to being something where you're honoring them. That will help you process it and also cope with it as you move forward. All right. Then there's abandonment trauma. This requires self worth and attachment repair. Very important. Then there's betrayal trauma. This demands rebuilding trust and reestablishing regulation in your nervous system so you can trust people again. All right. And then there's parental/generational trauma. This requires you to forgive your parents, set new boundaries, and become the person that breaks the generational curses and perform some legacy healing, which is very important. We had to name these different forms of trauma because you can't heal what you haven't named. I'll say that again. You can't heal what you have not named. Identifying the pain is the beginning of your healing journey. Okay? So, in closing, I want you all to understand trauma does not mean you're broken. It means that something inside of you is asking to be understood. And that is your starting point, not your finish line. Take what you've identified in yourself now from this video and bring it to a licensed therapist, psychologist, or psychiatrist and let these insights help guide you to a real professional healing journey. Don't fight these monsters alone because if you tackle them alone, they can win. But if you tackle them with help, you will win and you will come out on the other side stronger. Because when dealing with trauma, you have to know that it's going to kill the previous versions of you. But if you're willing to take an honest look at yourself and you are taking the opportunity, you'll realize that you're given a very rare opportunity to rebuild yourself intentionally and birth an even better version of yourself, which is what I want for you all. So now that we've identified all five monsters, the next step is learning how we face them one by one. So until next time, I want you all to ensure that you get the help that you need. And just a heads up, next we'll be learning why the fear of being left alone controls your life so much. I'm sure you all can guess what monster we'll be tackling with that. Until next time, kings and queens, I love you all and understand we are changing this world one person at a time. So please like, please comment, please share, please subscribe, and please share this video with someone you know who needs it. I truly, truly, truly want us all to live the best lives possible. And I know that sometimes we go through things, but it's important that we don't give up and that we keep fighting because somebody loves you and somebody cares about you and somebody wants you to be here. So I love you all. Chasing this world one person at a time. And I'll catch you in the next one. Amen.